Okay, so the transfer portal has become a huge part of college football, and the most important position is the quarterback spot. On paper, I thought the SEC had a ton of big-time transfer quarterbacks, but in reality, they didn't have as many as I thought. Still though, there are some big names that are transferring to the SEC this fall, some backups with a lot of potential, and some guys who are good safety option. We're to go ahead and rank each and every quarterback transfer to the SEC this year, but before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and rank every SEC quarterback transfer for 2025. Okay, so we're going to break this down into 3 tiers. The third tier is guys who are safety options who likely won't get on the field except for an emergency. Tier 2 is going to be guys who I don't think are really all that good that could start, or guys who are going to be backups but have a lot of potential. The first tier are the ones that are impact transfers that are going to start right away and should have an impact this season. Okay, so to first start out in tier 3, we need to talk about Harrison Bailey. Man, it has been a whirlwind of a career for Harrison Bailey, as I remember when he committed to Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. Coming out of Marietta High School in Georgia, Bailey was the number 3 pro-style quarterback in his high school class, and some had him as a 5-star recruit. At 6'5", it looked like he had pretty much endless potential, but unfortunately, he was never able to make things work. I think he started just 1 or 2 games at Tennessee in 2020 before losing the job in 2021. He left the Vols after just 2 years, before then going to UNLV. He didn't really get an opportunity there either, and that was extremely concerning. For 2023 and 2024, he transferred to Louisville, where he saw a little bit of action towards the end of the season, but with 1 more year of eligibility remaining, he has since decided to transfer over to Florida. I think this was due in large part to them losing Deshaun Purdy, who ended up deciding to go to Wake Forest after coming from Charlotte. Billy Napier already has a big-time freshman coming in, plus DJ Lagway from last season, so Harrison Bailey is just an insurance policy and is a 6th-year backup. Just like Bailey, Texas A&M decided to also get an insurance policy as a backup, and that comes in form of Jacob Zeno. Coming out of John Jay High School in San Antonio, Texas, Zeno's been playing college football for quite some time, as he was a part of the class of 2019 and committed to Baylor as the number 8 overall pro-style quarterback. I truly cannot believe he has eligibility remaining, but Zeno spent 3 seasons at Baylor in which he had 1 total touchdown before transferring to UAB. He ended up starting the 2023 season, throwing for nearly 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, but this past season, Zeno barely got on the field. With 1 more year of eligibility remaining, Zeno will likely be that 3rd or 4th string quarterback for A&M, and is definitely just an insurance policy, and probably under no circumstance will see the field. Okay, so the last guy in tier 3 is Cole Gonzalez. Cole Gonzalez ended up coming out of Trinity Catholic High School in Ocala, Florida, and was a 0-star recruit. He ended up having to go the FCS route as he would decide to play for Western Carolina. Gonzalez ended up taking over in 2022, throwing for 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns before having his best season in 2023. He ended up throwing for nearly 3,000 yards and 28 touchdowns and also had another decent season in 2024. After 3 years of playing a lot for Western Carolina, he decided to enter the transfer portal, and he will now be headed to Oklahoma. Honestly, he's an under-the-radar quarterback transfer, but with them bringing in John Mateer, and then them both having Michael Hawkins Jr. and a talented freshman, Cole is likely just a backup option, but again, if things go crazy, maybe he'll get an opportunity to see the field. I highly doubt it though. All roads lead to this year's. The wild ride to New Orleans is almost over, and the big game is just around the corner. For fans looking to cash in on this year's, MyBookie is where it's at. They've packed in promotions, props, and features that make betting on this event not only exciting, but also profitable. So here's the playbook for this year. There's a couple of props that you can bet on, which include how long it'll last, if the singer will nail every word or have a ton of slip-ups, and heck, even the color of this year's Gatorade. Yeah, MyBookie has tons of options, and if you bet, it'll make it more fun. There are a couple of options including boosted parlays, the money bag, squares, tiered bonuses, and live betting and streaming. When you decided what you're going to pick, go over to MyBookie and use my promo code Fisher50 for your first bet. Celebrate your Sunday by having a good time with MyBookie and get your game plan ready. If you're one of those people that thinks the NFL was rigged for the Chiefs, you can now use MyBookie to put your money where your mouth is. If there's one thing for certain, we have no idea what's going to happen during the big game this year, but be sure to head over to MyBookie to make this Sunday a little bit more entertaining. Thank you to them for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so for tier 2, we have the guys who either have a lot of potential, will be backups, or are questionable starters. The first guy we need to talk about is Pierce Clarkson. He's the son of former famous quarterback trainer Steve Clarkson, and he would eventually arrive at St. John Bosco High School in California, and Clarkson became a 4-star recruit. He ended up becoming the number 23 quarterback in the class of 2023, but didn't really have the greatest stats in the world. He decided to commit to Scott Satterfield in Louisville, but when Jeff Brom came in, he decided to keep his commitment. Louisville fans thought he'd be the savior of the program, but he just didn't exactly fit Jeff Brom's system, got buried on the depth chart, and decided to enter the portal. Clarkson ended up barely playing in his 2 years at Louisville, completing a total of 4 passes for about 18 yards. He entered the transfer portal and settled on Ole Miss, and nobody's really talking about this. Somehow, Pierce is ranked outside of the top 100 quarterback transfers for 2025, but he's still a guy who, in my opinion, has a lot of potential and was highly rated coming out of high school, so I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Pierce, I really don't think has a chance at seeing the field, but again, he does have potential at least. The next guy I sort of feel bad for, and that is Aaron Noland. Coming out of Langston Hughes High School in Georgia, Aaron Noland was a super big deal. At one point, he was considered nearly a 5-star recruit and threw for over 10,000 yards and 100 touchdowns in his high school career. Because of that, Noland was the number 7 quarterback in the country and would arrive at Ohio State as the future. But as we saw with Nick Saban's retirement, Julian Sayin decided to transfer in, and everyone knew Noland was probably on his way out. He did not see the field at all in 2024 and ended up getting a national championship, but now he's looking to play. At least he'll have to wait another year. He decided to transfer to South Carolina, where he will most surely be the backup to Lenora Sellers, but many expect Sellers to have one more year before he goes off to the NFL, so Noland should be able to take over as a true junior in 2026, and this guy has a ton of potential, and I think could be a star in the SEC, but we'll just have to wait and see, because he's not going to play this year unless something really bad happens with Sellers. To me, one of the more questionable moves in this year's portal was Michael Van Buren. He ended up becoming a 4-star recruit coming out of St. Francis Academy in Maryland, and he was not expected to play right away, but he did because Blake Shapen got hurt. Van Buren ended up starting a couple of games for Mississippi State, throwing for 1,800 yards with 11 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He definitely had his growing pains, but showed plenty of flash as a true freshman. He probably could have gotten the starting job in 2025, but instead he decided to enter the portal, where he's also sort of pulling an Aaron Noland and will wait a year. He's going over to LSU, where he's definitely going to be the backup to Garrett Nussmeier. The Tigers also have Colin Hurley on the roster and should bring in a big name in 2025 and 2026, so Van Buren is leveraging his career on being the starter in 2026 for the Tigers. I'm not quite sure how it'll work out, but he's a guy who's shown a lot of flash, and who knows, maybe Nussmeier will be terrible this year and Michael Van Buren will take over. Okay, so for our last spot in Tier 2, we need to talk about Auburn's quarterback haul, which included both Ashton Daniels and Jackson Arnold. Let's first talk about Daniels. Coming out of Buford High School in Georgia, Daniels was seen as a top 60 quarterback in his high school class and ended up getting an opportunity to play at Stanford. These past 2 seasons, Daniels been on and off the field, and in his best season came in 2023, in which he threw for 2,200 yards and 11 touchdowns. This past year, he only threw for 1,700 yards and 10 scores, and also struggled majorly with interceptions. He was a decent runner though, as he ended up having 700 yards on the ground, but Daniels decided to transfer to Auburn, where hopefully he'll be better developed by Hugh Freeze. Again, I don't think Daniels will probably be the starter, as I think he'll start out as a backup, but he does have 2 years of starting experience and is competing for that starting job. That guy is Jackson Arnold. He was a 5-star coming out of Denton Guyer High School and was seen as a future superstar for the Oklahoma Sooners. After being a mixed bag in the 2023 bowl game, Arnold ended up being the starter in 2024, but struggled horrifically. He threw for a total of 1,400 yards with 12 touchdowns, and at one point was benched in favor of true freshman Michael Hawkins Jr. Arnold was never able to quite figure things out, and he decided to enter the 2025 portal, where the 5-star will now transfer interconference to Auburn and will most likely be the starter. Again, I really don't know what is going on with Jackson Arnold and how good he actually is, but I do think he will be the week 1 starter for Hugh Freeze in Auburn, but I don't have that much confidence in him right now, and he's also not guaranteed the job, so that's why he is in Tier 2. Okay, so number 4, I have Luke Kromenhoek. He's the first guy in Tier 1, and coming out of Benedictine Military School, he ended up blowing up as a freshman and actually got his first offer from Florida State, where he would later commit. He ended up turning down Georgia at the last moment, and Kromenhoek became a 5-star on some sites, but was consistently ranked as a top 50 player and a top 5 quarterback in the class. Kromenhoek was not expected to play at all in 2024 due to DJ Uiagalelei and Brock Glenn being on the roster. Except we all know how Florida State's season ended up going, as it was a complete and utter disaster, so Kromenhoek ended up playing in 2 games where he was a mixed bag. In total, he had 502 yards with 3 touchdowns and 2 picks, but definitely looked like he was a little bit young and needed more time. Kromenhoek entered the 2025 transfer portal, where he quickly went over to Mississippi State. He's now going into the SEC, and I'm not quite sure if he's going to start. I think he should, but Blake Shapen is back for his 15th year of college football, so they may roll with Shapen at first. Except I'm not so sure about that, as Roanoke has more talent, and they probably paid a lot of money in NIL for him to go there. There's no reason to really play Shapen in my eyes, and Roanoke is definitely a starter who I think will have a big season in 2026, but for now just has a lot of potential. Alrighty, so at number 3 we have another guy who's a journeyman, and that is Zach Calzada. Coming out of Lanier High School in Georgia, Calzada was a 3-star recruit and eventually signed with Texas A&M. As a true freshman with the Aggies, he ended up being the backup to Kellen Mond, who would take over in 2021 and had a couple of epic games, including that win against Alabama. He finished with 2,100 yards. He then transferred to Auburn, but he never got an opportunity to play, so he transferred down to the FCS with Incarnate Word. His 2 years at Incarnate Word were pretty insane and followed up on what Cam Ward did a few years ago, and in total he had about 6,000 yards and over 50 touchdowns. Calzada had 2 great seasons in Incarnate Word, and he'll now be another transfer that comes to Kentucky. But Devin Leary, Brock Vandegrift, and Gavin Wimsatt were all terrible, so we'll see if Calzada can break that quarterback transfer curse. I do think he'll 100% be the starter for Mark Stoops, and we'll have to wait and see how he does, but he has plenty of experience, and he's played in the SEC before, so he should be pretty solid this year. Okay, so at number 2 we have Beau Pribula. Mizzou has one of the most fascinating quarterback rooms in the country for 2025, as they have Matt Zoller as a huge recruit who's coming off of a horrible injury. You have Drew Pine, who's a journeyman quarterback who started a couple of games last year. You have Sam Horn, who was at one point a prodigy who hurt his arm playing baseball. And then you have Beau Pribula, a guy who has never started a game for Penn State, but is getting a ton of hype. Coming out of Central York High School in Pennsylvania, Pribula went totally under the radar, but was seen as a gamer, and in my opinion kind of reminded me of Trace McSorley, just in at least the way that he played. But Pribula was only a 3-star, and Drew Aller was a 5-star, so Drew got to see the field. Except we saw Beau play on and off these last 2 years, and in total, he passed for 9 touchdowns and ran for 10. He's shown he has plenty of potential and is a gamer at the quarterback spot, so he decided to transfer over to Mizzou, where I think he'll most likely be the starter. I think Beau is ready for the SEC, and in my opinion is actually going under the radar a bit. I'm excited to see what he does this upcoming fall, and he's a name to watch. Okay, honestly, there should have maybe been a 4th tier, as John Mateer is in a tier of his own. Coming out of high school, he was a late riser in his high school class, and after getting a late offer to go to Washington State, he happily accepted. He ended up being the backup to Cam Ward, but he won the job in 2024 and absolutely exploded. Mateer ended up throwing for 3,200 yards with 29 touchdowns and also ran for 826 yards and 15 scores. He became a college football superstar, but everyone knew he was probably going to enter the portal. When Jake Dicker ended up going to Wake Forest, the writing was totally on the wall, and then when Ben Arbuckle became the OC at Oklahoma, it was nothing but a done deal. Mateer apparently got a huge NIL deal, and in my opinion, he was the number 1 quarterback in the portal, but some people think that's Carson Beck. Mateer should be a day 1 starter, a Heisman candidate, and he has a ton of NFL hype for 2026. He's a guy I'm super pumped to watch, and if you want to check out my full feature on him, I'll drop that down in the comment section below. Okay, so yeah, he finished at number 1. Today we got to talk about all the quarterbacks that transferred in the SEC that are listed on the 24/7 Sports Transfer Database. There might be a couple others that I don't know about that aren't listed, so if I forgot someone, let me know down below. Let me know who you think will be the best transfer quarterback and what topic or style video I should do next. Also be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.